Imagine this. For generations, someone else has run your house, deciding your routines, splitting your family, controlling your future. Then, suddenly they hand you the keys and say, "It's yours now? Good luck." This was the reality for many African nations in the 1960s. Independence wasn't just a political event, it was a leap into the unknown. Who would lead these new countries? The world watched as a mix of scholars, unionists, and charismatic visionaries stepped forward. These leaders had to build nations from scratch: flags, anthems, schools, and most importantly, a sense of unity among dozens of ethnic groups. It was like baking a cake without a recipe, ingredients, or even an oven. They dreamed of freedom and progress but faced enormous challenges: colonial systems designed for exploitation, and internal rivalries threatening stability. In this chapter we'll meet 5 West African leaders: Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria, Ahmadou Ahidjo of Cameroon, Sylvanus Olympio of Togo, Hubert Maga of Benin, and Maurice Yameogo of Burkina Faso. Their stories are not simple tales of heroes or villains. They are stories of hope, struggle, and the daunting task of building nations under the world's gaze. These men inherited chaos and tried to steer their countries through stormy seas. Their journeys reveal what it truly means to build a nation from the ground up. Let's begin. Nigeria's unity was fragile from the start. The country's 3 main regions, North, West, and East, were locked in a tense power struggle. Zeke, as ceremonial president, had influence but not real power. The prime minister from the north held the reins. Politics became a game of ethnic arithmetic, with positions and resources divided along tribal lines. Corruption crept in, and many felt independence had simply replaced foreign rulers with local ones. By 1964, disputed elections and a controversial census pushed the country to the brink. Zeke's calls for unity were drowned out by mistrust and cynicism. In January 1966, young army officers staged a coup, claiming to end corruption, but it was violent and deepened ethnic divisions. The coup shattered trust and ended Nigeria's first democratic experiment. Zeke's dream of unity was left in ruins, a casualty of the very divisions he tried to heal. The optimism of independence gave way to fear and conflict. Nigeria's story became a warning of how fragile new nations could be. The dream was deferred, but not forgotten. Tensions simmered. Ahidjo's unity had a dark side. Fearing disorder, he crushed opposition, starting with a brutal rebellion. Political freedoms were sacrificed for stability, opposition parties were banned, and Cameroon became a one-party state. Elections became formalities, and dissent was silenced. The federal promises to Anglophones faded as power centralized in Yaoundé. Bilingualism in theory but French dominance in practice, Anglophones felt marginalized. The peace Ahidjo built was enforced, not chosen. In 1982, after 22 years, Ahidjo resigned, handing power to Paul Biya. But exile and accusations of plotting a coup followed. Ahidjo's legacy, he unified Cameroon, but also laid the foundations for authoritarian rule. The unity he built was fragile, and the divisions he tried to suppress would resurface. Cameroon's story became a lesson in the costs of forced unity. The Iron Fist left a lasting mark. In Togo, Sylvanus Olympio became the first president, a man of principle, fiercely independent. Olympio wanted true independence, especially from France's economic grip. He ran a tight budget, refused luxury, and aimed for self-reliance, even planning to leave the CFA franc zone. But his biggest challenge came from within. Demobilized Togolese soldiers, trained by France, returned home jobless. Olympio refused to expand the army for budget reasons, angering the ex-soldiers. On January 13, 1963, they staged Africa's first post-independence coup, assassinating Olympio. His death shocked the continent, a founding father killed over a budget dispute. The coup marked the start of an era of military takeovers in West Africa. Olympio's vision of economic sovereignty died with him. Togo's fragile democracy was shattered before it could take root. The tragedy was a warning of how quickly hope could turn to chaos. Olympio's story became a symbol of the dangers facing new African leaders. Independence was no guarantee of stability. The struggle for true freedom had only begun. In Benin, then called Dahomey, Hubert Maga became the first president of a deeply divided country. Regional and ethnic rivalries forced a rotating presidency among three leaders, an unstable arrangement. Maga's dream was modernization, infrastructure, jobs, and a stronger economy. He launched development plans and sought foreign investment, but the country was broke and tensions high. Political infighting and lavish spending fueled public anger. In 1963, corruption scandals and strikes paralyzed the nation. The army, led by Colonel Soglo, forced Maga to resign in a bloodless coup. This set a precedent. For the next decade, coups and counter-coups became the norm. Maga, apathy, and Ahomedegbe Tomadin took turns in power, but stability remained elusive. Benin's early years were marked by chaos and dashed hopes. The promise of independence was quickly overshadowed by political turmoil. The cycle of coups revealed the fragility of new African states. The dream of progress was constantly interrupted. In Upper Volta, now Burkina Faso, Maurice Yameogo rose to power with promises of progress. He banned opposition parties, declaring a one-party state for unity's sake. Yameogo's rule became increasingly personal and extravagant, even as the country remained desperately poor. His lavish lifestyle and repressive policies alienated unions and traditional leaders. Economic failure and austerity measures fueled public anger. In 1966, massive protests erupted. The army refused to suppress them. Military chief Lamizana told Yameogo it was over. He resigned, and the military took power. Yameogo's fall was a classic tale, a leader who began with hope, but was undone by corruption and authoritarianism. Burkina Faso's story echoed those of its neighbors: promise, disappointment, and the army stepping in. The cycle of hope and disillusionment continued. Independence brought new challenges, not instant solutions. The struggle for good governance was just beginning. The stories of Azikiwe, Ahidjo, Olympio, Maga, and Yameogo capture the hopes and hardships of Africa's first independent leaders. They dreamed big: unity, progress, sovereignty, but faced immense obstacles: colonial legacies, ethnic divisions, and global pressures. Some saw their dreams shattered by conflict or coups. Others achieved unity at the cost of freedom. Early coups and instability weren't just failures of leadership, they revealed the fragility of new nations. Democratic institutions were young and weak. When crisis hit, the army often stepped in. Popular discontent, corruption, and economic hardship toppled governments again and again. It's easy to judge these leaders now, but they were pioneers in uncharted territory. Their successes and failures shaped the future of their countries. They laid the foundations, flawed but vital, for the generations that followed. Freedom was not an endpoint, but the start of a long, difficult journey. The weight of that freedom was their first great test. Their stories remind us, nation building is never simple. The struggle for a better future continues.